I want to tell you about my grandfather because he was the one who taught me some of the most important lessons there are about being a Christian. My strongest memories of Granddad were after he retired, so I can't say much about his earlier life. Nevertheless, I do know some of the details about his faith journey. Granddad was baptized and confirmed when he was 20 years old on March 1st, 1948. You should know that the church was always the heart of my grandfather's life. Granddad cared very much about this church, the community of Christ. 23 years after becoming a church member, he was ordained as a priest in 1971 at the age of 43. 15 years later, he was ordained to the priesthood of elder in 1986 at the age of 58. All in all, he served as an ordained minister of the community of Christ for about 45 years. Furthermore, he served as the pastor of the Merlin congregation for 21 years, from December 1985 until the congregation closed in June 2006. I'm sure there are many church members with testimonies of my granddad's ministry. However, an even more powerful testimony is of the many non-members who benefited by his ministry as well. The reality is, unfortunately, that there are many people who don't feel comfortable going to any church, or they don't find church relevant, or they have had a negative experience there, and so they just don't go. There are most certainly more than a few people who never went to church, but knew Bud and came to think of him as their pastor. They felt comfortable around my granddad and did not feel judged by him. You see, he was a priest for regular people. I believe this is one of the best lessons his life has for us. The Christian ministry of our churches should grow its roots in the congregations, but branch out into the community, blessing our neighbors and every single person who we find around us. I do not feel Granddad really judged people, or at least I was never aware of it. One of his favorite sayings to use in sermons was that God doesn't make junk. I'm sure he truly believed it too. He never looked down at anyone because they were rough around the edges, or if they were making poor life decisions, or if they were just plain messed up. He was happy to talk to everyone. Nevertheless, Granddad did collect junk. He had a huge garage and a work van filled with junk that he had collected over the years. He would collect stuff that other people just didn't want anymore, and not because he needed any of it, but because it just might become handy in the future. Yet, much more often than not, he was collecting junk that would be useful in helping somebody else. Yes, Granddad truly believed that God doesn't make junk. And it would serve us all quite well to remember this in all of our relationships with other people. I believe Granddad knew how to do everything, or at least as it seemed as though he did. He was a locksmith, a carpenter, an electrician, a gardener, a painter, a handyman, and many, many other things. He was a jack of all trades, which seems like a very rare thing nowadays. The world just does not produce men like Granddad anymore, which is a shame, I think. I can't count the number of times I went to Granddad for help doing something I had no clue on how to do on my own. Whether rewiring a lamp or picking an old lock or whatever, Granddad either knew how to do it or he would figure out something out for me. It was like his superpower. The reality is that he used his knowledge and skills to help people and improve the world around him. You see, Jesus taught his disciples to use their talents to build the kingdom of God. And in the same way, that is what Granddad did with his talents. He used them for the good of others, and so, with every good deed done for his neighbors, he spent countless hours and days building God's kingdom here on earth. Lastly, Granddad demonstrated for me what it means to be a truly good neighbor. I doubt there was not one person in any of the streets where the Swains lived, ever, who did not know who Bud was. Granddad believed that to be a good neighbor means you not only know who your neighbors are, but you also help each other out as much as possible. I think the majority of his neighbors were at one time at the receiving end of his acts of kindness and good deeds. As well, I don't think there was any limits to helping someone in my granddad's mind. I doubt that he ever stopped to consider if he should help someone, or even how much he should help. Rather, his only concern was doing what it took to get the problem solved, doing what it took to finish the project, or doing what it took to help someone get better. Jesus' life and ministry shows us the same thing. And Jesus spent most of his time helping all different kinds of people. He didn't judge anyone to be unworthy of his companionship and compassion. And my granddad did the same. I'm going to make some assumptions that are pretty safe to say here about who my granddad was and what he believed. I feel that a huge motivation for the good he did in his life was because he believed in Jesus. It was because he truly tried to follow Jesus Christ, that he tried to be like him. He was a good, kind, and friendly to all people and tried to help them in any way he could, because he truly believed that is what Jesus had done and would do if he was here. So it became Granddad's job to do the same in Jesus' name. Furthermore, I am sure that Granddad believed that death was not the end for any of us. No, Granddad believed in life after death. That was where we would become reconciled with God and live on forever in heaven. And you see, that is why it mattered to him what he did with his life and how he treated other people. Because one day, just like Granddad, we all leave this life and we all have to come to peace with what we have done with our lives. And peace will be found easily if we have treated other people well and did good unto them. I admit my granddad was not perfect. I'm certain that nearly everyone who knew him has their own funny story about him. Yet, despite not being perfect, he still was able to make this world a much better place. And making the world is what really matters in the end. And I'm certain that there are so many people whose lives have been made better because they knew him. And since, as my granddad liked to say, God doesn't make junk, death is not the end of any of us. Granddad knew that God is not willing to throw away any of us. He knew that each and every single person in this world are special and precious children of God. And because of what I know of Jesus, and because of what I've witnessed in my granddad, I too believe that this is absolutely true.